Okay, great. Hi, my name is Kristin Jacobson, and I'm business partner with Yuli Chetapali, and it's an honor to be working with him. We are introducing today Sirica Therapeutics. Okay, there we go. So we are targeting autism. The prevalence of autism is exploding. When I first started in the field, it was 1 in 150, and that was back in 2000, and they were talking about how that was exploding from when it used to be 1 in 10,000. At the end of 2021, they just released the data from the CDC that showed that it's now 1 in 44, and that's based on their surveys from 2018. Autism is a very personal journey, both for Yuli and for myself, and for many of the people involved in this project. Oh, you can now see my screen. Okay. I have a 20-year-old son with autism, and he is kind of got me into this field 19 years, 20 years ago, I guess, although he wasn't diagnosed till he was 3. So maybe it was about 17 years ago that I got into this field, and I really focused on insurance reimbursement and behavior therapy and getting him what he needed. Yuli, this is Yuli's daughter on the top, on the cover of Autism Parenting magazine. He's a parent as well. So autism is very personal for us. The problem that we are trying to address is a big one. There are 1.6 million children in the United States and 5.4 million adults. It's only very recently that the CDC actually came out and talked about and tried to assess what's the population of adults. Because as the population of children keeps growing and growing, the adults are growing as well. Current treatments involve very intensive one-on-one interventions, and they are severely capacity constrained, and they have therapist-dependent clinical efficacy. And there's almost no adult focus. And most importantly, the therapies, because they're so individualized and so intensive, they're not scalable. The goal of Sirica is to develop and commercialize a technologically advanced, clinically proven, scalable therapeutic system for autism that is flexible, controllable, efficacious, and also fun. There are 3 major components for our system. I'm going to talk first about the virtual reality. It is a deeply immersive. There are a number of articles that talk about the benefits of virtual reality for conditions such as autism, ADHD, other developmentally based systems. They are very flexible and controllable, which allows for a very incremental approach. If you look at therapy for autism, it's very incremental and it's very, very individualized. And so the virtual reality component of that really makes it an excellent target for treating autism. We also have advanced robotics, and there's also a lot of clinical literature that support bilateral movement in enhancing different kinds of treatment therapy, in whether it's early on bilateral movement in cerebral palsy is critical to overcoming some of the deficits or minimizing some of the deficits. Bilateral stimulation is effective for EMDR. We combine virtual reality with advanced robotics. And there's also the ability to have sensors and capture lots and lots of data. And then the third component we have is machine learning, with the collection of all that different data and applying it to machine learning and applying algorithms. Then we'll be able to learn from that and continually improve the therapy. Hang on, I got to figure out how to move something to get back to my control panel. Okay. So our hypothesis is that the flexibility and control of virtual reality plus the bilateral motor integration of the robotics, plus the data collection and iteration that's possible, really enhances neuroplasticity and will improve outcomes for our population. In terms of the product itself, the product has already been significantly de-risked. We are teaming up with Torque3, and they have already done multiple prototypes. Uli has been on the working with Torque3 for a couple of years now. And in the right picture, you can see his daughter, who was the first individual with autism that looked at this and tried this device. But the thing that's really de-risked about it is it's already functioning, and there's already a system in place that we can use to do our pilot trials. I'm going to see if I can get the video to go. I only want to just play a few seconds of it. And you'll be able to see and hear both how Siri, his daughter, interacts with the machine, as well as it switches back and forth, so you can actually see the virtual reality world that she is seeing. And it's not going to work. All right, I'm going to skip the video because it's not working, and there's no. Could you see it? Could anybody see it? No, I didn't think so. In my computer, it wasn't showing it. But you can hear the sounds, and Siri really enjoyed her session. When she was finished, she asked to do it again. And it's really terrific. One of the things that's great also about the virtual reality part is that individuals with autism have a lot of sensory dysfunction and cannot tolerate a lot of visual stimulus or sound stimulus. And so this system can be completely tailored to the level that the individual is at. Go back to the full screen. In terms of competition, there are some people looking at robotics. Yale is doing some job training with robotics. There are a couple systems looking at virtual reality, Florio, and there's an adaptive technology to work on driving. And then there's also some work on machine learning. Cognoa is doing digital diagnosis and treatment. And then Endeavor has done a video game for the treatment of ADHD. But there isn't anybody out there that's combining all three, the robotics, the virtual reality, and the machine learning. In terms of the economics, there are, as I mentioned, there are 1 in 44 births. So it's really a very, very prevalent and growing condition. Some of the early devices that have gone through have gotten breakthrough technology fast track from the FDA. So that is promising. We would be a class 2 device and pursuing a 510K exempt. And we believe we would be able to also get the breakthrough status. Insurance coverage, while not for these kinds of devices, we have gotten, and that's the effort I was involved in terms of insurance companies now cover autism treatments in all 50 states. So that's, it's something that they're familiar with and that they're used to having to pay for and being part of the team in figuring out how to cover it. The demand for services has been continually increasing. There are 60,000 therapists, which are about 50 to 60,000 therapists, which are the top level therapists. There's also now 120,000 frontline therapists that are registered, and the top line therapists have doubled in the past 4 years. The cost of doing nothing for autism and just leaving it on its continued course is that by 2025, it's estimated it's going to cost $461 billion. And so that's just a way much too large of a cost to not be addressed. We believe that the market size is in the $2 to $5 billion range, as estimated by a number of different sources. In terms of the revenue stream for our particular device, we envision a couple of different revenue streams. The one I'm going to talk about first is clinic-based, where we place the machines in clinics, charge $200 for a 30-minute session, split the revenue with the provider, because they need to make sure to be able to make revenue and be able to afford their systems. But we're taking the cost of the machine on us so that they don't have a capital cost early on. Using, $80 a session and 80% capacity, you would get $575 a day, nearly $13,000 a month, and about $150,000 a year. So in terms of our rollout in 2022, we could move immediately to pilots with the 3 devices that we would have available to us. 2023 and 2024, we would expand to 10 machines and do our clinical trials. And then in 2025, we could start a commercial release with 30 machines for about $4.5 million. And then maybe a couple years later, be at 100 machines for $10.5 million. But then there's an entire another avenue, because that is just a minuscule portion of the market. If you just take the 5.4 million adults and say you're going to target and be able to make the machines much smaller, make them much cheaper, end up in the home market and with insurance coverage, even if you just reach 1% of the adult market only, at $5,000 a year, you'd have $270 million market annually, and it would continue to increase because 1% penetration is a very, very low assumption. In terms of our costs, the machines right now cost $50,000 to build, but we would expect that there's a logarithmic cost reduction potential as you increase the quantities. The manufacturing cost would come way down. There's a maintenance cost, but even with those costs, we would be able to achieve an 80% gross margin, even without reducing any costs at all, even though we do think there's significant potential in reducing the costs. In terms of the team, Yuli is the CEO. He, obviously, you know him from Innovator MD. He's involved in Torque 3, Anthem AI. He spent his career at Kaiser and developed incredible systems that saved Kaiser significant money in patient management, and studied at UCLA, I believe. Hopefully I got that right, Yuli. I worked at Autism Deserves Equal Coverage for the last 15 years and Autism Speaks, leading the effort in California and across the country for insurance reform, former McKinsey consultant with a Stanford MBA. Kiran Patel is our regulatory and product specialist. He worked at Beckham Coulter, Stryker, J&J, and Terumo. And then we have our advisor, Tim Lacey, who is advising us on science. He's a Torque 3 scientist from Walter Reed, US Air Force, and GW University. In terms of what we are asking for, we are looking for funding partners. We're trying to raise a seed of $2 million to help us purchase our first 3 machines and all the intellectual property that comes along with them. And then we would focus this year on starting our regulatory path, starting our pilots, and enhancing our intellectual property portfolio. We're also looking for clinical partners to host and run up to 3 pilots, and research partners in terms of design and conducting studies. And that is Sirica. We're very excited and pleased to introduce you to it, and open to answering any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm wondering if any of the colleague judges have any questions, maybe Vince, since he was the last one not to ask question.
I have is, which I remember from the presentation, that you're going to combine machine learning, virtual reality, and one more component. Now, what makes you, what is the key? I know you're trying to integrate all these 3 things, But what makes you, so defensible that somebody wants to copy an idea, you will be still further ahead. What makes that something stand out, which is even if you have an IP or something. So how do you really scale this at speed?
Well, there's a couple of different ways to do that. First of all, the technology has been in development for 4 years now, and so there's significant intellectual property that's been built up, as well as just specifics and hurdles and know-how that we will be acquiring from Torque 3. And all of these things are already integrated in their system and it's already working. So that's a big part of how we would do it. And then we would, I think, also have a regulatory lead in terms of going through the process and making claims, and then continuing to build our intellectual property portfolio.
Now, where are you going to launch this? In California? Where's the launch slate?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
At what location in the US are you going to launch? You said you need 2 million for 3 machines. So where is the launch site?
Yuli, do you want to talk about who you've been working with?
Sure. So there are a few clinical partners we're talking with. Number one is the clinic at Stanford. They have an autism clinic. And Dr. Lawrence Fung, who spoke earlier today, he's going to be an advisor for the research part. We're also approaching Mind Institute in UC Davis and another clinic in Marin County. So basically in California.
Okay, thank you.
That is for research studies.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Kristin.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. This was awesome. I'm now tempted because